Feel it land, didn't feel it crawl, and certainly didn't feel it start to bite. No one does, and this is no coincidence. Ticks are one of those creatures we fear not because we know them well, but quite the opposite. We know they're dangerous. We know they carry something terrible. But what exactly happens when they end up on your skin? Most people have a vague and mostly incorrect idea. I want to correct this not to scare you more, but rather to make your fear meaningful. Because meaningful fear is more beneficial than panic. Let's start with how ticks get on a person in the first place. There's a persistent myth that ticks jump from trees. They don't. They don't have the niches or the anatomy for it. A tick can't jump, basically, just like you can't wiggle your ears. Well, most of you, what does it actually do? It sits on grass or a low bush, usually at a height of 20 to 80 centimeters, with its front pair of legs spread out. It just sits and waits, sometimes for weeks. When something warm and alive passes by, it latches on instantly. Then it begins its journey through the body. And that's where the first thing that ever hooked me happened. Ticks don't bite right away. They choose a spot. Sometimes they crawl over the body for 30 minutes to several hours until they find a suitable spot. They prefer thin skin and shallow blood vessels, the groin, armpits, skin behind the ears, the folds of the elbows, the area behind the knees, and the scalp in children. They detect this by temperature and the concentration of carbon dioxide emitted by the skin. So, the tick literally searches for the warmest and most breathable spot on your body and finds it more reliably than you would find it on yourself. Now comes the bite. The word bite isn't quite accurate. Ticks don't have teeth. They have mouth parts. And they're designed in such a way that when I first saw an electron microscope photograph of them, I felt uneasy. Imagine, there are two chelicerae. These are mobile appendages with teeth at the ends, like tiny files. The tick uses them to cut the skin, not pierce it, but rather to cut it with a sawing motion, and then plunges its hypostome into the cut. This is the central rod, also covered in teeth, only directed backward, like the serrations on a fishhook. Once the hypostome enters the skin, you can't just pull it out. It's fixed mechanically. Therefore, you shouldn't pull the tick out with a sudden movement. More on that later. But the main action begins in the first seconds after penetration. The tick injects saliva. And saliva is perhaps the most complex and most frightening thing about this creature. It contains dozens of biologically active substances, each of which performs a specific task. First, it's an anesthetic. That's why you don't feel anything. The tick numbs the puncture site almost instantly. Your pain receptors simply don't have time to send a signal to the brain, because by the time the tissue is damaged, it's already chemically shut down at the local level. This isn't a crude operation, it's a targeted action. Second, it's an anticoagulant. The tick needs liquid blood. If the blood starts to clot around its mouthparts, it'll be trapped in its own meal. Therefore, saliva inhibits blood clotting right at the bite site. Not throughout the body, of course, only where it's feeding. Third, and this is perhaps the most unpleasant part, are the immunosuppressants. The tick suppresses the local immune response. Your body should react to skin damage, redness, swelling, inflammation, and an influx of immune cells to the site of entry. This is standard defense. The tick suppresses it. It injects substances that inhibit the function of neutrophils and macrophages. These are the first cells to arrive at the site of injury. The tick prevents them from reaching the site, and it prevents those that do reach it from functioning properly. The end result is this. You feel no pain, the blood doesn't clot, and your own immune system at the bite site is operating at half capacity. All this happens in the first few minutes. The tick has created a zone for itself in which it can safely feed, and it will feed for a long time. Not a second, not a minute. A female ixodid tick can remain in the skin for 3 to 10 days. During this time, she increases in size tenfold. A hungry female weighs about 3 to 4 milligrams. A full-grown female can weigh over 300. That's a 100-fold increase in weight, as if you gained 7 tons in a week. And here's where it's important to understand exactly when it becomes dangerous. Because the main fear associated with ticks is, of course, the disease. Lyme disease, also known as borreliosis, and tick-borne encephalitis are two different infections, with different mechanisms, and they are transmitted differently. Encephalitis is a virus. It is contained in the tick's salivary glands and begins to enter the bloodstream almost immediately after the bite, within the first few minutes. Therefore, prompt tick removal helps against tick-borne encephalitis, but it doesn't guarantee safety. The virus may have already entered the bloodstream. Borreliosis is a different story. Borrelia bacteria, a type of bacteria from the genus Borrelia, live not in the salivary glands, but in the tick's intestines. For them to enter the saliva and then into your bloodstream, the tick needs to feed for quite a while, from 12 to 36 hours according to various sources. Some researchers say the minimum time is around 24 hours. This means that if you find and remove the tick within the first 24 hours, the risk of contracting borreliosis is significantly lower. Not zero, but lower. So the habit of inspecting yourself after every trip outdoors isn't paranoia. It's perfectly rational behavior. Now, how do you remove one? I still hear advice to put oil, alcohol, or nail polish on the tick. The logic is that it will suffocate and crawl out on its own. It won't. Ticks have an extremely low oxygen requirement. They can survive without air for hours, but the irritation caused by oil or alcohol can cause them to regurgitate their intestinal contents into the wound. So, if the tick contained Borrelia, you've just increased your chances of becoming infected. Don't help the tick infect you. There's only one correct way. Grab the tick as close to the skin as possible. Use tweezers, a special tick hook, or thread to create a loop and gently pull upward. Don't twist or tug. Pull smoothly and evenly. If the head remains, don't panic. It's unpleasant, but it will come out on its own, like a common splinter. It no longer poses a threat, because the salivary glands don't function without a live tick. Okay, let's say the tick has been removed. What next? Observation is key. The most characteristic early sign of borreliosis is erythema migrans. This is a red spot around the bite site that gradually expands, often with a clearing in the center. It forms a ring, a target. It usually appears 30 days after the bite. If you see something similar, see a doctor immediately. In its early stages, borreliosis is treated fairly reliably with antibiotics. If it's advanced, it can affect the joints, heart, and nervous system. Encephalitis is more complicated. Antibiotics are useless against it. It's a virus, but there is a vaccine, and it works. If you live in an endemic area or regularly go into the woods, vaccination is perhaps the smartest investment in your peace of mind. There's another thing that's rarely talked about. Not every tick is contagious. Depending on the region, the proportion of ticks carrying the encephalitis virus ranges from a fraction of a percent to approximately 6%. The numbers for borreliosis are higher. Infection rates in some populations can reach 30–40%. But even an infected tick doesn't necessarily infect you. These are probabilities, not guarantees, neither one way or the other. I've read comments on forums where people wrote, "I've been bitten 20 times and nothing." This doesn't mean ticks are safe. It means these people were lucky 20 times. Statistics have no memory. One last thing. Ticks have existed for about 100 million years. They were found in Burmese amber from the Cretaceous period, clinging to dinosaur feathers. Yes, they drank dinosaur blood, and then the dinosaurs died out, but ticks did not. They survived mass extinctions, ice ages, and the replacement of all large mammals on the planet. Not because of strength, not because of speed, but because they know how to do one thing and do it with an absurd degree of perfection. They sit, they wait, they bite, they drink. And one more small detail that, frankly, caught me off guard when I discovered it. A tick feeds 3 times in its entire life. 3. The larva feeds once, the nymph once, the adult once. At each stage, it finds a host, drinks blood for several days, falls off, and molts. Or, if it's the final stage, it lays eggs and dies. An entire life of 1 to 3 years for 3 feedings. In between, months of waiting in the grass, on the forest floor, without food, almost without movement. 3 meals in a lifetime. And each of these 3 times must be successful, otherwise that's it. No line, no offspring. Millions of years of evolution tuned to not miss 3 times. If you liked this video, subscribe.